Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mindful Money Nuggets, where we uncover tools, strategies, and mindset shifts to create financial well-being. I thought I'd share just a little bit about my journey today because we're nearing the end of the year, and as a solopreneur, I am in charge of everything. And one of the things that I'm really looking at is strategies. And I was just at a conference and I realized that one of my deepest desires is to serve all levels of the market. And when I say levels, I mean people of all income positions. I think one of the things that's frustrating for me is that I see how great of a need there is for people to get control of their financial well-being, their habits, and they need a plan. And so few people really take the time to do it. It's such an easy thing to avoid. It's easier to just stick our head in the sand and only deal with it once a month when the crisis of bill paying happens. And I really am trying to figure that out. So I know that many people are on a spectrum of where they fit, and they aren't, as if you've watched my previous episode about whether you need a financial coach or a financial advisor, some people can't do either. They either don't have the resources for the financial coach and they don't meet the minimum requirements for the financial advisor. And I really am looking for a path to serve those people. So I'm actually putting a shout out to you if you can think of ways that I can do that. I am looking at different methodology. I'm one person, so I obviously can't coach everyone. And I'm perfectly willing to work on a sliding scale. I can't work for free. And that actually brings me into the topic we're diving into, which is a topic that is incredibly close to my heart, and it's budgeting on variable or irregular income. And I have pretty much walked this path most of my life. I've definitely been a W-2 employee a couple times with two different companies. I was W-2'd with my hedge fund as well. So I was W-2'd, but let me just say this, that when I worked at the hedge fund, I was 100% commissioned employee, which meant that my income was completely based on the assets under management of my clients, and it ebbed and flowed with market conditions. So if our fund was performing well in a certain market, then obviously I was much more flush than if we were having a negative return moment, which happens in the investment business with some, regularity, not often if you have a good fund. I was also, though, an actress, which had incredibly unpredictable earnings, and like many actresses and actors, you have to supplement your income because you do have these very big ebbs and flows in your income stream. So trust me when I say navigating finances when your income feels like a roller coaster can be challenging, but it is truly not impossible. So in this episode, I'm going to share my personal lessons and practical strategies and a powerful demonstration that I use in my Unlocking Financial Wellbeing Tips and Tools workshop that will help you stabilize your cash flow and reduce financial stress. So I want you to grab coffee, grab a glass of water, grab a notebook, and I really want you to use this as a learning module for your journey. So let me start with a little background. I've mentioned this just now, but let me just give you a little more detail. So when I was an actress, my income was sporadic at best, and booking gigs was incredibly unpredictable. As an actor, we spend most of our time auditioning, less of our time on sets, and a lot less time earning a dollar. So we have to stretch everything and we have to cobble together a lifestyle. So then later, as I mentioned, I was 100% commissioned employee in the investment business. And again, my income fluctuated with how our fund was performing, and it definitely hit the ebbs and flows in the market. And I would have one year that felt like I was swimming in abundance, and then another year where I was scrimping to cover my essentials. So living in this feast and famine cycle taught me some valuable lessons about stability and planning and the resilience of using a budget. I will say that one of the key things that I learned too during this feast or famine moment was how easy it is when you're living in that abundance to get crazy with your spending. And then what I would call the famine ends up being like a debt recovery cycle, because you end up building up debt just to survive. And then your next abundance period, you spend making up for all the debt that you've incurred. So the key is stabilizing your income. So how do we stabilize variable income? And it starts with 3 key steps. The first one is getting radically clear on your true expenses. Your budget must account not just for your day-to-day expenses, but also those infrequent but predictable ones. The insurance premiums, the car payments, the kids' camps, or that yearly mini vacation that you always justify because you need a break and you know you're going to go on. So here's the thing. I don't want you not to take that vacation, but I don't want it to haunt you with the stress for months afterwards. So let's avoid that with a plan. Step 2 is avoid the feast or famine cycle. We all know how tempted it is to spend freely when the money is flowing in and then cut back to the bare minimum during the lean times. But this cycle is unsustainable and it is stressful. Instead, focus on building a financial buffer, a cushion that smooths out the ups and downs. The third step is know your core money values. When the times are tight, your core money values will guide your spending decisions. Trust me on this. They remind you of that bigger picture, why it all matters. The more meaningful the goals are and the experiences that you have associated with your core values, the more likely you are to stay on budget. Aligning your spending with these values ensures that you stay grounded, even during the financial uncertainty, especially, I should say, during the financial uncertainty. All right, so to illustrate this, I want to share a demonstration, like I said, that comes from my Unlocking Financial Wellbeing Tips and Tools workshop. This shows 2 scenarios that highlight why stabilizing cash flow is so critical. I want to talk about stabilizing fluctuating income. For those of you who navigate the freelance or the contract world, this can be particularly intricate and really demonstrates the importance of income stabilization. I want to visualize your financial journey. So in it here, I have plotted someone's fictional yearly salaries with the blue dots. So you see those here, all these blue dots, and their living expenses. So what the base costs for them, just their food and shelter and all the things that you have to have for living, are represented in this orange line. Understanding this rhythm is really the first step to mastering stabilizing your income. So please note that this is not an exact science, that the living expenses do fluctuate from month to month. I get that. But unless there is an emergency and there's a really extra large expense, they typically fall within a small margin, give or take inflation or other things that might be going on in the economy. So for illustration purposes, I am using a static number that is represented as $50,000 a year. And again, I've also, instead of breaking this down monthly, because it would be far too big of a spreadsheet, I've made this a yearly income stream just for the sake of demonstration. Okay, so I want to break down those dots that we saw. So I want to show what money is left after living expenses are covered. So here's a snapshot of our fictional friend's financial voyage. It's marked by the highs and lows and the surpluses and the shortfalls. This tale is a powerful reminder of life's ebbs and flows and the need for a mindful spending strategy. So in 2024, they have an extra $20,000 above and beyond the $50,000 that they need for living. In 2025, they have $10,000 extra. In 2026, they have $10,000 less. In 2027, they're flat, which means they didn't make any extra. They made their 50,000. They were able to cover their expenses. And in 2028, they have 15,000 less than needed. And in 2029, they have 15,000 more than needed. So keep in mind the things that could cause a year of a lot less income could be a strike. We just saw that with the entertainment world. It could be a loss of a job and then having to have a period of several months without any income. So these are all the things that can cause these big drops in income. And we've all experienced some shocking moments. So here is our first spending scenario, which is based on spending based on your checking account balance. So walking through this scenario, we're going to witness the seductive danger of spending based on your bank balance alone. Here is what it might look like if you spend based on your checking account balance. In 2024, there is a $20,000 surplus, as you recall, which they spent on the following: a new sofa and coffee table for $4,000. They put some money aside for a car down payment, $5,000. And then they went on a much needed vacation for $7,000. And then they put the rest towards savings. So they spent $16,000 and saved $4,000. In 2025, with a $10,000 surplus, they took a mini vacation. This could be a getaway with college friends or a weekend away for the parents. And they spent $2,000. They bought some new clothes for this event for $500. They've been wanting to get back into exercising and needed a new bike. So they bought a bike for $1,000. The refrigerator went out and they had to replace that for $2,000. And while they were there, they decided since the dishwasher was aging as well, they would get the matching dishwasher for $500. They put the rest towards savings. So they spent $6,000 and they saved $4,000. In 2026, they have an unfortunate year and have a $10,000 deficit. So they need to use the $8,000 from their savings, plus they also use the credit card to cover an additional $2,000 because they needed $10,000 total to cover their shortfall. So they weren't able to put anything aside for savings, and they now have a credit card balance of $2,000. In 2027, while they are flat and still covering their living expenses fine, they have a flat tire and find out that the rest of the tires are bald and they need to replace them. So they have to charge those on their credit card, and they are a total of $400. So now their credit card balance is $2,400. In 2028, they need to cover a big shortfall of $15,000. So now they have no savings left because they've used that in the previous year when they had a shortfall, and they have to use their credit card completely to bridge this gap. So now their credit card balance is $17,400. In 2029, they have an additional $15,000, a surplus. So they take a large amount of that and they pay down their credit card balance. So they pay it down $7,000, and then they take another much needed vacation because it's been 4 years since their last vacation. And that cost them, for the family vacation, $7,000. So at the end of 5 years, they have a credit card balance, which is debt, don't forget, of $10,400, and they have no savings. So this is a path that can lead to stress, debt, and a cycle of financial strain. I want to add something here that they've used the credit card float, and I want to show you what that looks like. So credit card interest is really a sneaky thief. Even at a modest 15% APR, which most credit cards are closer to 21% APR. The cost over 5 years can be significant. And this isn't just money that they've spent, it's potential savings, dreams, and the freedom that they've for not having debt that they've burned away. So in the 5 years that they had the credit card float, they've paid a total of $4,830 in interest. So planning for quality of life purchases. Now let's dream together. I want you to imagine a future where every joy, from the vacations to the new car, is not just hoped for, but it's planned and saved for. This isn't just about avoiding debt. It's about crafting a life of joy and intention. So now I want to take you through another scenario, one where we do just that. We plan for the quality of life expenses, and we do this by creating budget categories for these expenses. Budgeting for future expenses is putting a defense in place to eliminate or at least radically reduce our need for future debt. So here are a few we will use for this example. They're planning a family vacation that they want to take in the summer of 2025. They want to put a down payment on a new car by 2026. They're pre-funding living expenses for 6 months, and they want to have this category pre-funded by 2027. This is also known as UNAB's rule number 4, aging your money. And the last thing they want to maintain a $5,000 budget for stuff I forgot to budget by 2028. Now, I know this is a little redundant because I'm telling you, you should actually save for the specific savings categories. But since they're new to budgeting and they haven't really captured all of these unexpected anticipated expenses, we want to provide a cushion. So by having a category called Stuff I Forgot to Budget, they've provided that cushion. Let's dive in to our second scenario. Our family's financial situation remains unchanged from our previous discussion. Their income is exactly the same, and they require that $50,000 annually for living expenses. For the year 2024, they're looking at a $20,000 surplus. What do they do with this extra cash? They smartly allocate $10,000 to their living expenses for future needs. They're dreaming of that new car, and so they wisely start with a $2,000 down payment category for the car. A family vacation is on the horizon for next summer, and they tuck away $5,000 so that they'll have the money for that unforgettable vacation. The remaining $3,000, it goes into the Stuff I Forgot to Budget category, which is a safety net for the unplanned expenses. You could argue that if we've done our job and we've captured all of our true expenses, we are covering everything in pre-funding of our future living expenses. But it does take some time when you're first getting started to capture everything, because some expenses do not happen annually even, and they can be surprises. Honestly, it took me about 2 years before I felt like I could lower the amount I was keeping in my Stuff I Forgot to Budget category. So this year, they're not spending, but strategically saving for what's to come. As we move into 2025, their surplus is $10,000. They continue to bolster their living expenses by $5,000. The car fund receives another $2,000, inching them closer to that new car. The vacation fund gets a top off of $2,000, and then the trustees' Stuff I Forgot to Budget fund, it gets a $1,000 boost. They take that eagerly anticipated family vacation, and it costs them $7,000. Oh, and then life throws them a curveball, that $2,500 appliance replacement. Without a designated home repair fund, which my program would definitely advocate for, they draw from the Stuff I Forgot to Budget category. After this, they've spent a total of $9,500, some of which was saved the previous year.
Their financial cushion for future expenses now stands at $15,000 plus $1,500 in the stuff I forgot to budget category. Fast forward to 2026, and a $10,000 deficit appears. To cover this, they dip into their pre-funded living expenses category, leaving them $5,000 in that category. Come 2027, income and expenses break even. But the car needs new tires. They're faced with a choice, new tires or a new car. They opt for the latter, using the $4,000 saved for the down payment, and they finance the rest. This will increase their monthly outgoing expenses slightly due to the car loan, but they secure a favorable loan at 6% APR. In 2028, a financial storm hits, a job loss, or a strike leads to a $15,000 deficit. They use the last $5,000 from their pre-funded living expense category, $1,500 from the stuff I forgot to budget, and as a last resort, charge $8,500 to their credit card. 2029 brings a $15,000 surplus, which allows them to clear credit card debt and enjoy a well-deserved $4,000 mini vacation. The rest, $2,500, reinforces their living expense fund. Contrasting this to our earlier tale, in this one, every surplus is a seed for future dreams, and each financial decision is a step towards stability. I hope you can see that there is nothing magical here. This narrative isn't about winning the lottery or achieving every goal. It's just the power of proactive planning leading to more stability and optimism, and ultimately to financial well-being. So why prioritize stabilizing cash flows? It enables us to enjoy life's pleasures like taking a vacation or purchasing a new car without resorting to high interest debt, and navigating and covering cash flow needs for 4 or 5 years with foresight and control. And remember, they were able to pay off their credit card balance in under 1 year, which was avoiding that sneaky thief we talked about earlier of interest rates. And they did this all with no credit card debt at the end of 5 years. Remember scenario 1 ending with a $10,400 credit card debt in 2029? In this scenario, despite the added expense of a car loan, they're in a healthier financial state with zero credit card debt and significantly less stress. This demonstrates the impact of planning ahead, allowing for a fulfilling life with a greater sense of financial command. By showing you this, I hope you see that there is no perfect, right? This was not a perfect scenario. Life happened, and we were able to embrace it and roll with the punches, as in UNAB rule number 3. But with a clear plan and achievable goals in place, you can live life to the fullest and have a sense of control over your life.
All right, so what are the key takeaways? Proactive planning allows you to embrace life's joys, vacations, new cars, without the weight of high interest debt. Here are some practical steps to how to stabilize your income in summary. Number 1, I've said it, budget for the irregular expenses. Use categories like stuff I forgot to budget or future living expenses. These will serve as your safety net for unexpected and infrequent costs. Number 2, create the financial buffer. Aim to save 3, 6, or better yet, 12 months of living expenses. This really depends on the unpredictability of your income, but If you are someone who really doesn't have like a season, like you can't identify the seasons of your income stream. Like, let's just say you are a wedding photographer. If you're a wedding photographer, then you know, oh, this is my really busy time of year and my high earning time. So you can kind of plan the cycle of it. But if you're someone like me, who is an actor, who just worked when there was money coming in, then I needed to buffer out longer. So this buffer really does smooth out the fluctuations and reduces that stress. And I hope that the demonstration really drove that point home. Number 3, review and adjust regularly. Treat your budget like a living document. Check it weekly or monthly at a minimum to ensure it reflects your current financial reality. I'm going to tell you that this is one that's tough for me. I am money avoidant, even to this day. And it's not like I'm living like I was when I was an actress, and sometimes I was literally down to my last $10. But I still have residual avoidant behavior. And I have to say that I often, like with dread, open my budget and then, within 2 minutes of being in it, realize it's not so bad. Even if it's a bad period or I'm seeing some negative spending, I have a plan and I walk away feeling more clear-eyed and more in control. And at the end of the day, that is how we get to well-being. We settle that nervous system and we're able to feel just a little lighter and more present in our day-to-day action. So really don't avoid it. Don't avoid it. All right, number 4, dream with intention. Budget for life's joys, family vacations, the new car, because financial well-being really shouldn't be about deprivation. It's about crafting a life you love and that feels authentic. Stabilizing variable income isn't about perfection. It's about progress and planning. With clarity and discipline and alignment with your values, you can weather income fluctuations and live with financial peace. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your biggest takeaways with me on social media. You can find me here on YouTube, on LinkedIn, or Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe for more actionable tips every week. Until next time, remember, financial freedom starts with a definition. All right, take care. Bye-bye.